Welcome to a new decade specific reading vlog. This decade is the 1930s. I'm coming to you at the end of this process because I never filmed an introduction. This vlog is like very tumultuous, or like it covered a very tumultuous period, but I hope you enjoy it and I will let you enjoy the vlog. Something I thought I would do as part of this 1930s vlog is just talk about like the books that are on my shelf and kind of show you like the potentials that I could read, because with the last vlog that I did, the 1920s vlog, I ended up I think reading like half of the things that I mentioned at the beginning and then like adding in a bunch of other stuff. So this way you kind of like know the potentials and then I can decide a bit more freely throughout the rest of the vlog what I actually pick up. And I also did kind of think I would show you some of the books that I read from the 1930s. Just thought it could be interesting. There's Nightwood by Juna Barnes that I have read. There's Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, which is a beautiful novel. And then there's The Squire by Enid Bagnold, which is a very interesting little book about pregnancy, this one like woman's pregnancy. I really loved it when I read it. It's really interesting and yeah, very much like about death and life and being reborn / born. And then I've got The Waves by Virginia Woolf, but this book is actually kind of like on my TBR pile because I want to reread it, and perhaps I will reread it during this vlog. Who knows? The last one that I have read is Claude Connell and Marcel Moore's Disavowals, which is actually translated from the French by Susan Demuth. And then the other books that I have from the 1930s to read are these. A book that I'm definitely going to get to, The Weatherhouse by Nan Shepherd, which is the second book in the Grampian Quartet, I believe. And I read The Quarrywood in the 1920s vlog, which is the one I think I will start first. Which perhaps I will finish first if this is the running theme for any vlog where I try and read a Nan Shepherd book. But we'll see. Hopefully not, because I really do want to just like read this because I just ended up enjoying The Quarrywood so much. And this is about a community in Scotland, and I presume it's kind of similar vibes to The Quarrywood, but just like different people, different community. Or maybe it's the same community and a bit further on. I don't think Martha, though, the main character from The Quarrywood, is in it. Then there's Sunset Song by Lewis Grassic Gibbon, which was a book I picked up years ago because Jean from Jean's Bookish Thoughts mentioned it and says it's like a classic of Scottish literature. Then I've got Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, which I think I actually did read like a little bit of when I was younger and I was like bored by it, so then I stopped. But now I'm like, I should try again. I think I'd really like it. And then I've got Rita Sackville-West's All Passion Spent. I also have this other book that I wanted to show, which is Fighting Women, Interviews with Veterans of the Spanish Civil War. The Spanish Civil War was happening in 1936 to 38, if I remember correctly. And this is, yeah, literally just interviews with a bunch of women in various different organisations, including with different leftist politics. So there's like anarchists and communists. They don't have anybody who was in Mujeres Libres, which is the anarchist women's organisation, which does kind of disappoint me, but yeah, it still looks really nice. And there are also some pictures, which is super lovely, and I'm really interested in this history and I think it's cool, and obviously it's in the 1930s, so I just felt like it was relevant and maybe I will pick it up during this vlog. So those are the books that I potentially will read for this reading vlog. Well, I will read some of those, I just don't know quite exactly which ones yet. And oh, another book that is also kind of hasn't arrived yet but I will be reading at some point is Summer Will Show by Sylvia Townsend Warner, which is from the 1930s. So yes, that one I'm really looking forward to, and that is also kind of like a priority when it gets here. I will talk to you when I have another update or something fun. Bye! Hi, I just got sunburned today, which is why I look so red. Hey, I thought I would film like a bit of an update because I've picked up like a bunch more 1930s books recently, and although I haven't been making like that much progress, I also kind of have like managed to start reading some stuff. So first thing I want to tell you about is I asked the library for a book by C.L.R. James, who's very famous for writing, I think it's called The Black Jacobins, which is a book I would like to read, which is about the Haitian Revolution. And yeah, so he's like a famous kind of black Marxist historian. And he also wrote a fiction book called Minty, which recently got republished, I think last year maybe, as part of this like Bernardine Evaristo project of like black British writing. And this was published in, I believe, 1938, but I will double check that. So the library got this in for me, so this is an audiobook which I'm going to hopefully start reading soon because it sounded pretty interesting. Then I've managed to read, let's see, about 9 pages of this, so that's good. Summer Will Show by Sylvia Townsend Warner, which is better than none of it. We're now into August, it's like the 3rd of August now, so I'm going to be reading this month, even if it takes me all month. It seems interesting so far, although like I really have only read like 10 pages, so. A book that I have actually been making some headway in is this book, which is one of my new 1930s books, and this is Miss Mole by E.H. Young. And this was published by Dean Street Press, and I like messaged them and I asked if they would send me some copies of their books, and they sent me 3, so this is one of those. And yeah, it's about like a spinster, 40 to 50-year-old spinster called Hannah Mole, and it seems to be about her. She has like a sense of humour that I like. She's like unconventional, she's maybe intriguing, I don't know. I'm on chapter 5, which, you know, isn't very much, but is more than I have been reading. Also, something that's nice is this is actually the winner of the James Tait Black Memorial Prize in 1930, which is a prize that comes out of the University of Edinburgh, which is where I went to university for my master's degree. And so yeah, it's just nice that like, I don't know, it feels nice that like Edinburgh has such like a long history. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like in terms of other 1930s books that I picked up, the other ones in the Dean Street Press series, and they like publish like what they call like middlebrow fiction that's, you know, like underknown and forgotten and stuff. There's Begin Again by Ursula Orange, and I've heard like good things about this and I really like the cover. And this was published in 1936. And then this is A Harp in Lown Square by Rachel Ferguson. And the reason why I asked for this one is because Rachel Ferguson was one of the authors in my box of books that got lost. I had a copy of Alas, Poor Lady, I think is what it was called, which was published by Persephone Books. And so when I saw this, I thought it seemed interesting. I guess I like kind of still hold out hope that I will get that box of books, but I mean, it's been like a long time now. You know, that's not gonna happen, obviously. However, I just don't want to replace them yet. But yeah, so I thought this was like a nice way to do that. And I think this is about like a family probably, and like a particular household. But yeah, they both just seem kind of interesting. They have these like interesting, you know, they all have like the same like house cover, which obviously is like clearly supposed to be a kind of commentary on, I guess, like women's voices and the domesticity of women's work, which like, you know, isn't necessarily like a bad thing or anything, because the house is a very like political space. But anyway, so yeah, there's those ones. You know, depending on how long I do this vlog for and how and whether I can like get back into actually reading, which, you know, would be great. I don't think I will get to both of these, so, you know, depending on how well I do with my reading, maybe I'll get to this one. And then the other 2 that I got recently, one is Black Narcissus by Rumer Godden, which has like a BBC adaptation, which is what like piqued my interest about it again, and because it's about nuns. And also I'm actually in some capacity, I can't quite remember, I'll need to check with my family about this, but like I'm related to Rumer Godden, so I'm also kind of just like interested to read it. I also don't think it's going to be like great. It says it's set in the Himalayas, yeah, and about this convent, so we'll see, but could be interesting. And it was published in 1938, I believe. And then the other thing is another book. I have actually shown this in a recent video, but this is Fugue, I think that's how you say it. Can you tell I read a lot and don't speak much? By Olive Moore, which I think is like, I think it's just like a kind of collection of fragments, but there's not an actual blurb on the back, there's just like a quote about it being connected to Virginia Woolf. This was published in 1932. I think it's just like about a collection of things, and it's pretty short. This is one that I would like to get to in this reading vlog / soon, so yeah, hopefully I will. It also is compared to Juna Barnes and Jean Rhys. So those are the new 1930s acquisitions. I think, you know, I think part of it is I got like a bit over excited about this project, and then I was like, I'm gonna find lots of 1930s books, and then I did, and I was like, oh shit. Or at least like that would have only worked particularly well if I had been reading at the same rate that I had been in previous months, but because I slowed down it feels even more overwhelming. Hopefully I will come back to you with an update when I've maybe listened to some Minty, read some more of Miss Mole, and also read a chunk more of summer will show. Oh, also, let's just do a quick knitting update. Fun to do that. It doesn't look great actually at the moment, I guess. But like, this is the front. So I've knitted like the straps. I'm making a Capulet bar, so I'll put like a picture up so you can see. So I'm like getting through. I've got to do the straps on this side, then I go back to this other side, so I'll do the back, and then I join them up, and then I do the sleeves. I've only got this one ball left, which like potentially I could do it with, maybe. Because the thing is, like, I could make shorter sleeves, but I don't really want to because the sleeves are like one of my fave parts of the top. Cool, I will talk to you another time. Bye! Okay, I thought I would do an update because I've read the first part of this book. I think it has, yeah, 4 parts. So that's good, that's in progress. I didn't particularly enjoy the part that I read, but you know, not enough to like not read anymore. It feels weird to like mention this, but it also feels like weird to not mention this, so I'm just gonna say that like one of my friends passed away recently, and as I'm sure you can imagine, like that's just pretty fucked up. And you know, hard to deal with and stuff, and so everything's been more difficult, including reading. And I do think that like even without that, even without having to like deal with grieving and just feeling like shit and all of this stuff, this would be quite hard to read or like to get into anyway. And it's not to say I don't like a slow-paced book, but it just wasn't that great. I was actually sort of partially reading this with Shannon from That's So Poe, but she like DNF'd it at 18%, which is 60 pages out of the 90 pages of the first part, which I think is like totally fair. And also I think like part of the reason for that is that just like this first part, which is like an introductory part, is just like too long, to be honest. Like, yeah, and the main character Sophia, she has a lot of thoughts that are, well, yeah, her and to some degree the narrative, but from the scope of the story, like I do know that she is going to develop politically specifically. But yeah, so there's like comments about race, comments about class, and also comments about like ability that are just like not great. I think the worst for me has been like the racial descriptions and thought process and stuff. And like, this book is from the 1930s, so like that's 90 years ago, and then it's set in the 1840s, I think. Sylvia Townsend Warner is also, I would presume, trying to go for a kind of historical accuracy in terms of some of that like language specifically, but I don't think that she needed to in order for it to be historically accurate. Like, it's not like we needed that to know that this was like the 1800s, the 1840s or whatever. Like, we can tell that by, you know, like the way the clothes are being described, the way the land is being worked, what kind of technology is available, who's on the throne in France, that type of thing. That's one reason why Shannon like also stopped reading, is because the bigotry of the commentary is not fun to read. And like, yeah, so to some extent I do think that that will get better, but also I do think that like reading classic books does mean there is always going to be like a certain level of discomfort, specifically around like race when you're reading like a white author's book. But you know, I don't think that that necessarily means that people should like not read authors from the past who, well, I really feel like I'm too tired to actually try and have this conversation like in a meaningful way, but I think that there's like a big difference when you're reading an author in good faith and in bad faith. And I think there are some authors who like it's impossible to read in good faith, and some of that is like personal. And for me, like, I do trust Sylvia Townsend Warner generally, even though I did really dislike Mr. Fortune's Maggot, so I was kind of prepared for this to some degree, but I think I do ultimately trust her that like she's gonna make this better and it won't be as bad. I think the good faith bad faith thing also does sometimes come into like knowing more about a particular author's life or politics, or like what they did with their time and energy and money and how they lived, and if they were queer. And obviously that being queer doesn't like discount you from being racist, but I guess I say that more in the sense that it does demonstrate a particular kind of otherness that they experienced, and an otherness that I also experience, which also makes me more sympathetic and makes me want to read them in good faith, although I obviously don't think you always have to. And yeah, I'm not saying that anybody else should. Does that make sense? Okay, bye. Thing I can remember is the lighting of a candle. It is night, the middle of the night it seems to me, waking as a child does into that different world, mysterious, unfathomable, a separate world, as though one awoke in the depths of the sea. My father is there. He speaks to himself in a language which I have never heard before, and coming to the hearth he takes up an ember with the tongs and breathes on it. At his breath it awakens and glows, and I see his face and his lips moving. Then with the ember he lights tall yellow candles, and as the flame straightens he straightens also. For it is the Sabbath candle he had lit. I cannot understand it, and yet I can understand it well enough to know that it is something secret and precious, a jewel that can only be taken out at night. Hello! Just thought I would film like a really brief update because I'm like moving. I am going to be listening to, I think like a bunch of audiobooks, but one of them will be Minty, ゚only, which has like come back to me because it ran out. You know, somebody else wanted it and it went to them last time. So yeah, I'm going to be like, it kind of looks like I've already packed up, but I actually haven't because I need to like go rejig it around and whatever. But yeah, I'm moving. Did I say that I was actually moving? I'm moving from where I live in this flat in Edinburgh. I'm excited and tired and stressed out about it all at once. So yeah, but hopefully I will get to read some books whilst I do it. It's also like, reading's very hard. So at the moment, like I've basically only been doing audiobook reading, mostly when I've been doing stuff like packing or whatever, because I just don't really have capacity to do it like any other time. But it's nice to be like transported away in a story when I'm like washing up or when I'm trying to like organise my clothes or that type of thing. So yeah, just a brief update there. Brief blurry update to say that I've decided to DNF Minty, ゚only because there was like a really upsetting scene of like, I guess, child abuse, and I don't know, you know, if that kind of thing happens again in the rest of the book. I just feel really uncomfortable reading it and really upset by it. I have no idea if it like, it was in like the first sort of hour of the audiobook. I think like, you know, if I wasn't feeling bad I might be able to keep reading it, but I just don't want to. So that's really annoying. And it also means that I don't have anything from the 1930s currently that I can listen to via audiobook, so I'm gonna have to do some more like digging, but yeah. Meow. Hello! I thought I would do an update for my reading. I've finished a book and I also kind of wanted to talk about some other stuff I've been reading as well, but yeah, we'll start with the book. So I finished Miss Mole by E.H. Young, which is like a very kind of simple, I guess, story. It's about this like almost 40 like sort of spinsterish woman who is trying to find work and like going from place to place, and it's just like about her and like grappling with like her past and also her like own desires and like what she wants her life to look like. Also just like about her life, as in like her inner and her outer life, so like what is really going on inside of her head. And it's just about like the sort of banality of like care and caring work, and also the like pleasure of it. Miss Mole is obviously like a great name, and one of the characters in here calls her Moley, which I think is great too. So it's in the series that I spoke about before, and I do think that like the cover really has like literally nothing to do with what this book is about. Like I don't know why they put this person, who seems to be like pretty well dressed, even though like in the book like she doesn't have very much money, which means like most of her clothing is like a bit awkward and old-fashioned, and like Ruth, one of the girls that she looks after, is like a little bit embarrassed by her, even though she's also very sweet about it. But anyway, I don't know, like it's kind of hard to talk about this book in a way because like it's sort of a little bit plotless, but like, or at least like the plot is just very focused on like the everyday things and like the very like the small conflicts that people have, and also to some degree like the grief of like losing a mother, like not Miss Mole's parents, but although she does think about her parents, who are I think both dead, but specifically the people who she cares for the majority of the book, like their family situation. But it's just, yeah, it's like very sweet, and I do think like it's not queer in the way that Lolly Willows I think is, but it definitely does have like similar vibes to that. And I also think that the way that it kind of like exalts in the transcendent nature of nature is a little bit like the Quarry would, although to a lesser degree. Like we don't get, partially because of like the constraints of Hannah Mole's life, like we don't get as much of her just being able to like roam woods or whatever, even though she like does really want to do that. Yeah, I just think it's lovely, and I'm really glad that I read it, and I think it's great that like it's in this edition, because I don't think I would have been able to find it otherwise. And Ian Cheong has written like a bunch of other books too. This was from 1930. I think I do have one called like Jenny Wren, I want to say, from the 30s as well, which I will hopefully be reading at some point, but like not in this vlog, definitely. Also really good to like finally finish it, because I did start it a really long time ago, and I do feel like it's one of those books that like doesn't have, because it's not like plot full, it doesn't have a particularly like driving force to keep you reading unless you're just like very caught up in these people's lives, which is why I feel like I read, you know, the majority of it like in a week or so or whatever, rather than 5 months or however long ago I started it. I also kind of wanted to briefly talk about this play that I found out about, and now I can't remember how, but it's from the 1930s. I think I want to say like 1934, but I might be wrong. And I haven't managed to like find the whole play, but I did listen to and I'll leave like it linked in the description in case you're interested. I did listen to a read through first act, and it's a play called London Calling by ゚only Marson, who was a broadcaster, and she did like quite a lot of work, like I think with the BBC in the 30s to 40s, and focused on like Caribbean literary stuff. Like she was like Jamaican, I think she wrote like a bunch of stuff, but again like I couldn't really find any of it apart from this like clip from Act 1 of it. And yeah, like she's also writing in a time when like Pan-Africanism was quite big, I think, so that's also what's like impacting London Calling, which is just about, I did listen to this a little while ago now, but like it's about like, I think they're a bunch of students and they're kind of talking to each other just about their lives, but like they've been like invited to speak somewhere, and then they're gonna like make up an African country to be part of. I think that was it. And yeah, like if you do know like anywhere that I can read or watch or like listen to more of her work, then definitely let me know. Like I would really be interested. It would be really great to see like a press like Dean Street Press republish some plays or something. I guess I don't think it was ever like an actual play. I think it was always like a radio play, but like it'd be great if like they were interested in doing that, or I don't know, Persephone Books. I think that's it for an update for now. I think the next book I'm going to read is actually like being used to prop my camera on, but that's All Passion Spent by Sackville-West. I think I'm going to read that next, and I'm excited for it. I also do want to read The Weatherhouse still by Nan Shepherd, but at this point like I think I'm going to read it last. That's going to be like in the tradition of my 1920s vlog. So I'll talk to you later. Oh, fucking cool. Ow. Big two. Down what river ran the snows of last winter? No wider now this water, although spring looks bright from hedge and meadow, and the sunshine warmly lays hands on head, makes everything melt from its winter cold, its fret and pine. Down what river run the snows of last winter? Heavy they lay, frozen like slabs of stone, over the death that ill-sent season spread flat on the living. Ah, and they died alone, those who are under the earth that lies on the dead. Down what river run the snows of last winter? They melted to water, and frozen grief to tears flowed down to the wide embrace of anonymous water. They deepen the channel, this year and the other years, to carry the flow of grief that is coming after. Down all rivers will run the snows of next winter. We call it bus. What do you think, Lotte? Oh, sorry, you've finished that page, obviously. It's hard to do it this way. Perfect. Alright, thanks, Mummy. I deleted the last update I did, so I'm doing it again. Slurp, slurp, slurp. But first I wanted to rectify something that I said in a previous clip, which is that this book didn't have anyone from Mujeres Libres, which is the anarchist women's organisation during the Spanish Civil War. I thought that there wasn't, just because they weren't indicated on this list, which has the organisation of some people and then just the political alignment of others. So I just thought that they were saying that they interviewed anarchists rather than specifically women who were in Mujeres Libres, but there's actually interviews with women who were some of the founding members of it. But I mean, I haven't read them yet, but I just wanted to be clear. In terms of other reading, I finished All Passion Spent by Sackville-West. I think if you can accept that this book is about extremely rich people and yeah, and then it's a nice book. It is also about aging and kind of selfhood, I guess. When I read this, it did make me think of my grandma, which is nice. But yeah, so it's just about this widow. She's widow on the first page, who's 88, kind of retuning back into herself, refinding herself, making space for herself against her children and against youth, really, and kind of thinking about her life, but also just keeping living and finding pleasure in strangeness and joy, which is nice. But that woman is the widow of somebody who was the viceroy of India, and you know, she was the viceroy, I don't know how to pronounce that word. So you know, it's not great in that sense. But because it's post a lot of that stuff happening, I guess it feels less awful than it would if it was about those events and that immense power, colonial power being bestowed on someone at the time, if that makes sense. The fact that she's looking back on it and she doesn't or care about those things, so I guess that makes it feel less awful too. But yeah, I think if you can suspend those feelings, so that it's a nice book, but I don't think it's a must read for everyone, because yeah, I think your comfort or discomfort with it will probably vary a lot. It's nicely written, and it's the first novel I've read from Sackville-West, so I am glad I read it to see what it's all about. Also, I think it was a big seller during the time, so that's also kind of interesting. I guess I put this in my pile of things to talk about, but this is Valentine Ackland, A Transgressive Life by Frances Bingham, which is a biography of Valentine Ackland, who was a poet, who was a poet from the mid-century, you know, 19 1920s, late 1920s maybe, definitely 1930s to sort of 60s. And then in terms of next few books that I'm reading, I'm gonna read this one next, which is Fugue by Olive Moore. I still have no idea what this is about. It's like 130 pages, and I looked on like online to see if there was an actual blurb for the book rather than for like who Moore is or like how this is like Virginia Woolf, but the Goodreads and I think also the Storygraph entries have the same thing that I have on the blurb, which just doesn't tell me anything. But I think it will be interesting, and I read this page, which I don't normally do because like normally it's just reviews or something, but this is like from an autobiographical entry by Olive Moore in the 1933 edition of Authors Today and Yesterday, and she says like, she sounds very contrarian and like she hates London. She says, "I loathe books and never read them, except informative books, giving me facts, any facts, and all facts. I love travel best of all and yet get very impatient with it. I love meeting people once. I love best knowing absolutely no one but watching everyone. I dislike having to live in London, a parochial little village, but I have to. I dislike it so much that it does me creatively an awful lot of good. I dislike things very thoroughly indeed. Otherwise, I live in London, England. One gets genteel, tea-shop, bored, refined, amateurish, all things which make it so difficult for the creative artist to live in England, which is secure, pleasant, imitative, watery." Whew! Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna read that next. I really have no idea what to expect, so we'll see. Okay, fingers crossed I don't delete this one. Bye! I started reading Fugue by Olive Moore and I got like a couple pages in, but like I'm just not really in the headspace to read it. Maybe some of it has to do with the fact that like I don't know where it's going, like because I couldn't find an actual blurb for the story. So I've actually decided to like leave this for later. Maybe it will be a book that I kind of like read over like a really long period of time, you know, even longer than a like 11-month reading vlog. It really isn't to say it's bad, it's just like I think I really do need to be like in a different headspace in order to like read it and not feel kind of like just a bit like unable to like climb my way out of the prose and like actually comprehend what is going on. So I started reading this, The Weatherhouse, Nan Shepherd, and I'm only, you know, 30 pages in and it's very beautiful. Nan Shepherd is able to write about, I think, people's souls, specifically women's souls I guess, but in a way that is so like just astoundingly beautiful, I think. And there've already been like, you know, a couple times where I'm just like, oh, how does she do it? I've also been using this bookmark, which I think is funny because I do look kind of like it. So yeah, very brief update there. Hopefully I will come back to you when I've finished reading this. It does also make me want to reread The Quarry Wood because I can't quite remember like all of the details. I guess especially in terms of like when The Quarry Wood is set, because I want to like, you know, plot this book and the other book into a timeline so to see how or if the people overlap at all, because obviously there's like a 90-year-old woman in this, and so she must have been alive during The Quarry Wood, and I can't actually remember exactly the dates when The Quarry Wood is set either, so that's not helpful because this is just post-war, I want to say. Oh, also once again the glossary at the back of Scott's terms is absolutely every single word I've looked up, some of which are even like italicized in the text, hasn't been in the glossary, so so bad. I wonder if I like put the Quarrywood one, like I photocopied it or something, and then I put that in here. Like maybe the glossaries are supposed to build on each other, like they're a series too. That only makes sense and is actually useful when you've read all 3 of them or something. I am really enjoying it, so. Hello, I'm just having a snack and okay, I obviously can't do this. So I just finished The Weatherhouse by Nan Shepherd, as in like, you know, 20 minutes ago or something, and the ending did make me cry, and I might cry a little bit more about it if I feel like. I don't think I ever really talked about what this book was about, but it's basically, I think, set in 1917, and it's about sort of what happens when Gary Forbes, this person who is on sick leave from the army, he's like 29 when he comes back to ゚only. It's just kind of about what happens then. He's in love with Lindsay, who's a 19-year-old girl, who's like the relative of a bunch of women who live at the Weatherhouse, who are all these like older women, 3 sisters, Teresa, Annie, who's nicknamed Paradise, because I think her name is like Annie Dice, which is really sweet, and Ellen Falconer, and then also Ellen Falconer's daughter Kate lives with them as well. She's like in her 30s, or like is 30, and then also their mother, Mrs. Craig Mile, whose first name I can't remember, but she's quite old. She's like 86 I guess, and only gets older. In terms of my enjoyment, I definitely think I enjoyed this less than the Quarrywood. I'm interested to reread that book though, having read this, because I also think maybe some of the reason why this is considered the masterpiece and not the Quarrywood is because of like, it does have more of a closer attention on men. They like affect the story in a way that I don't think they really do in the Quarrywood, apart from I guess Martha's dad maybe a little. Whereas this does focus quite a lot on Gary Forbes, as well as this community of women around him. I really hope I'm in focus, I'm sorry if I'm not. And yeah, the kind of like inciting conflict really is that this woman called Louis Morgan is saying that she was betrothed to David Gray, who was one of Gary's friends who's died in the war. And Gary comes home and discovers that and is just like very upset by it and doesn't believe it to be true. So it's, yeah, it's about like inner experience, outer experience. It's quite a lot about faith actually, to some degree. I think it's a very beautiful and I suppose insightful book, and very like what symbols mean, or like what things come to symbolize is very important, and a kind of like whole new vocabulary almost, or like a language that only a few characters speak, which has like an immense effect on the plot. I think, you know, the plot is quite sort of simple because it's telling quite like a, I want to say like intelligent or something, but I'm not quite sure if like the plot is simple in order to expose complex inner workings of humans and humanity, and there's a kind of irony too, and also like a wit that I think runs through a lot of Nan Shepherd's work, because she's a little bit tongue-in-cheek and in that kind of comedic sense of sort of like making fun of people, but in a very like good-natured way generally. Obviously some people deserve to be made fun of more than others. I've lost what I was saying though. Gary comes home expecting to find his home just like flat and meaningless after being in the trenches. Also, he recently recovered from this fever where he was like dragging a man out of this hole, and the man was dead, but he sort of kept claiming that it was himself, which is obviously like redolent with a lot of meanings. And yeah, so he comes home and he just expects the Weatherhouse and ゚only to be, including his like really great aunt, Miss Barbara Patterson of Napoli, to just be like flat just this flat, dark expanse of non-being, and instead he finds it so full of life and energy and meaning, and it has kind of similar Miss Mole energy. I actually think I was thinking about Miss Mole kind of like hanging out with the women in this book, and I think that they would get on, or maybe they wouldn't get on, but it would be because they're so similar, you know. The way the narrative tells the story is kind of interesting from like a modernist and also just like a time perspective, which is that we're in the present and then we meet a new person and then we go back, but there's not quite an indication that that is happening. It's just sort of like textually, like we're walking along at the same pace and then we meet somebody new, so then we're like pushed back either years or a couple hours or some days or whatever, and then we go back again, and then we meet with that point, and then we go a bit forward, and then maybe we make another excursion into the past, which I think is a nice way of writing and reading. It is maybe a little bit hard to follow sometimes, but not really to the extent that, like, I think you just have to be paying attention. You can't just like let it roll over you like some books where you can just kind of like immerse yourself like that. You have to be very active, which I think like Nan Shepherd is really, she wants you to notice and pay attention in terms of human people, like the human landscape as well as the like natural world landscape. So yeah, I'm not gonna give it 5 stars, but I am gonna give it 4, so I am happy with that. I feel like this reading vlog hasn't been quite as successful as I sort of feel like it could have been, I guess, but obviously like it was really quite intensely impacted by grief, and I thought I would also, before I end this, talk about Summer Will Show again, because I haven't spoken about it for a while, and that's because I decided to stop kind of like publicly reading it like this. When I finish it, I'm sure I'll talk about it. I still haven't finished it, and I feel a lot of feelings about it because of grief, and because like I was reading it when I found out my friend died. I think like forcing myself to read it in this vlog is one thing if that had happened, but then also like having to kind of publicly talk about my experience reading it, when I think one of the reasons I'm reticent to finish it is because it's associated with the time that I found out my friend had passed away, and so I don't want to put that pressure on myself. I don't want to kind of make this book harder than it already is as a result of that. I hope that makes sense, and I do kind of hope to finish it, but I also think like if I never finish it, that's fine. I've read enough of it to know like the vibe. I've got it. I can't really remember what I read for this. I feel like I maybe didn't read as much as I thought I would, considering like how long this has taken me, but yeah, again, I think that's fine, and I think I'm happy to end it here with another great Nan Shepherd book to round things off. There is actually a third in this Grampian series. They also do include The Living Mountain in that, but I think it's kind of silly to do. Like, I don't think... Anyway, it's called like A Pass in the Grampians, something like that. I couldn't actually find a distinct version of it like the Briarwood and the Weatherhouse have. I don't think Canongate Classics, which is the editions I got, which are like Scottish classics specifically, actually publish it separately. Like I think you have to buy like a quartet bind up with it in, which I think is very weird and silly, unless people are really like, wow, the quality really goes down. But I don't know why it would. But anyway, I am excited to read that, and that did actually come out in the 1930s as well as this one, because this is very early. I think it was 1930. I feel like actually a lot of the stuff I read was early 30s rather than late 30s, which I think would have quite like a different vibe, and maybe I would feel a bit different about them too, considering what happens in the world in the late 30s into the 40s. I mean, obviously, yeah, there's been some stuff that engages with the Spanish Civil War, like I read. Well, actually, I didn't read a poem that engaged with it, but I read Valentine Ackland, who was very, like, engaged with the Spanish Civil War. But anyway, I think that's everything I wanted to say. Thank you for coming along on this journey with me. I hope it's not too long and too boring, and I hope you will have a lovely day whenever you see this. If you want to leave me, like, a storm emoji or a bird emoji or a fire emoji, these are all like emojis relevant to this, or a ring emoji, then please do, especially if you don't have spoons to like comment. I think that's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much for watching again, and I will talk to you when I next talk to you. Bye!